If you spend a lot of time on social media, particularly around the end of last year, right around election time, there's a good chance you saw one of the top viral videos, certainly of that time period, but maybe one of the top viral videos of all of 2020. It was called Dumb Shining Moment. It was very funny. And actually, a former NBA star had a hand in it blowing up, got millions and millions of views. If you were on Twitter, you may have seen it surface in your timeline. You may have come across it scrolling through Facebook. Well, today I'm talking to the brains behind that video. I've known him for a long time. He's also a former NBC page. He works in TV, has had a really interesting career as a writer and producer in the television business. At one point, he wrote for the WWE, has written on a lot of great shows. So we'll talk about some of that today, but we're going to get started with that crazy viral video, Dumb Shining Moment. My special guest today is Andrew Goldstein. How you doing, buddy?
What's up, man? Yo, Tavani, you're like a NBC page legend in my eyes. So I'm excited to jump on and talk to you. And also, I wish we could just use this whole podcast to talk Philly sports, but I think we're going to talk about other
Oh
things.
God, you're gonna start depressing me though too. Like what's going on? You know?
Yeah.
I know I find you to be a legend in the page pantheons, of course, but you're also big Philly sports fan, and I always think of you too when things go
I
on
know.
and
Yeah.
going on lately.
Look, I am so thankful for lately all the teams have just been driving me crazy, but I'm so thankful for having it all and having things like trade deadlines and NFL draft. I know, like in the beginning of quarantine with my in-laws, like the NFL draft was like the only thing that kind of like got me sort of like I would take these our dogs for a walk, and I was just like, okay, podcast, I'm listening to draft prep, and it was like this like little island I could go put myself on and like care about bullshit for a
Yeah.
second and not have to think about like childcare or pandemic or the work I have to get done. It was like this like reprieve, and it's trite that like these things are escapes, but especially in quarantine, man, things like having the like bubble NBA season and the NFL draft happening, and then the NBA coming back a second time, and
Yeah.
hot stove rumors and trade deadlines, like all that stuff really kept me going
Hey, I
mentally.
feel the same way. Especially, I felt that way when baseball came back too. Not only Major League Baseball, which came back in like late July, but even my kids' baseball.
Yeah.
That was all delayed for months. And getting back to that was because that first part of the quarantine was tough, man.
Tough. Yeah, I have a 2-year-old, so I'm definitely going to be consulting you when we start being able to have catches and get him into like the first rounds of Little League.
Yeah,
I'm so excited for that part.
it's very fun. I'll tell you. Just being a sports fan and having played sports, I was looking forward to that anyway. But it's great, And then when you see your kid out there playing, it's
I can't
super
wait.
fun.
It's literally like it's like the biggest thing I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. All right, so we'll talk about that. We got so much to talk about, but I want to get right to what you did right around November, right around election time. You made one of the most viral videos out there of the last, probably maybe of the last year, at least the last 6 months. If anyone was spending any time on social media, you probably saw this video. I'll hype it up a little here for a second, and then you can explain it. It was called Dumb Shining Moment, and literally it was everywhere. I kept seeing it on Twitter, on Facebook. It kept resurfacing for a couple of days. It was extremely funny. So you explain what it was, and then we can talk about how you came up with the idea and all that sort of
Yeah,
stuff.
well, look, I mean, we just talked about how big of sports fans we are, and around uh, so I just had this like nugget of an idea, like, wouldn't it be, look, we missed March Madness. We didn't even have March Madness. So
Yeah.
like I was already jonesing for like that. The best part of the whole tournament is the end with One Shining Moment plays, and you see the whole highlight package that they cut together so fast, and Luther Vandross and the whole thing and the chills that you get from it. And so I that was already in my mind of like missing that. And so just watching sort of everything gets so heated with the election and everybody looking at like Trump was just like everywhere, and it just seemed like there were so many gaffes Eh, the story is that a friend of mine was putting together a bipartisan campaign for voter registration, a very sort of well-connected friend of mine, and he got a bunch of funding to fund this celebrity-driven campaign for voter registration, both on the left and the right, but completely bipartisan. And towards the end of that, sort of as we got to the election, and it was voter registration, the push for voter registration had kind of ended. He reached out to me and he was like, "Look, I have some money left over. Do you have any ideas?" And we were batting some things back and forth, and I just kind of like blurted it out because I still have that sort of like sketch comedy brain from our 20s, and I was just like, what if we did one shining moment from March Madness, but instead of all the highlights from the tournament, it's all the highlights from the last 4 years. And when I say highlights, like obviously it's all the like embarrassing moments. And he was like, amazing, let's do it. How much money do you need to do this? And on a shoestring, I was just like, if you give me $3,000, I can get an amazing editor and I can get a researcher. And I was like, give me a day. Let me see if I can put this team together. And it all worked out. And as I said to you before we started rolling, it's one of those cool things where like, working in TV production, like all the way from a PA all the way up to showrunner. I mean, there's so many amazing professionals that you come across that all want to do stuff like this, but they have to do their day job. They all want to do their like fun projects. And so I reached out to an editor that I love, who works for way more money than I was able to pay him. But he was like, I love this idea. I could do this. I'll take my Friday. He took a Friday. He basically took his Friday and cut it for me. And the researcher, a kid who I worked with during quarantine on the Quibi series that I ran, Speed Run, which was a daily video game show. He had come from one of the late night shows as a researcher, and he was a writer on our show. And I knew he was out of work, and I hit him up and I said, because I knew he had the research background from late night.
Yeah.
So I said, dude, how fast do you think you could pull together like 60 clips of Trump, all the most embarrassing
Trump gaffes, right? From
Trump
4 years
gaffes.
of Trump
And he
gaffes.
was like, I already have most of them. Like, I already have a cachet of those.
Yeah.
So he pulled together the clips in amazing, like light speed. And I said, and I sent them over to this editor who I said, like, he took a Friday and he cut it together. And I did like one round of notes and we put it up. And look,
wait, you're telling me it came together in like a matter of like 2 or 3 days?
It came together in 2 or 3 days. Yeah. I got the idea sort of greenlit, and then I took a day to get my team together, and then the researcher basically pulled all the clips together in a day, and then the editor in like a day and a half with like one round of notes to tighten, and I was ready to put it up by, I think I put it up on November 7th.
So that was right like a day or two after the election, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
So that's an amazing quick timeline that you worked with, but also like go back through the process. So they put it all together and then they show you, and are you like, we need, did you have any notes for them or like suggestions?
Yeah. So, look, some of the clips, like just basically anytime you do a supercut like this, you want as many jokes as possible. You want a joke per second, basically. And so some of the clips take a little bit longer for the laugh to come, and some of them don't hit as hard. And then the other funny thing, which is so, because it's Trump, is like, I watched the video. I watched like the rough cut, and then it made me think of like, there's like 20 other clips that are out there that we didn't even pull. I was like, oh wait, what about when he thanked, Kansas City, Kansas for the Super Bowl? I mean, that didn't go in because it was a tweet, but I'm just saying it like jogged in all of our memories of all these other clips that are out there, all these other gaffes that are out there. Like there's literally no shortage with that fool of like the mistake, like the on-camera mistakes that he made. And like at one point we had like a montage of his tweets, and like that didn't really punch as hard, so we cut that and things like that. And we really kept it to like the on-screen and the verbal miscues. So yeah, the rough cut was really like swapping in, swapping out clips.
Right.
I just wanted a joke per second.
Right. And then so you got all these clips of Trump gaffes lined up, and then you take that great classic song from Luther Vandross, One Shining Moment, which, like you said, CBS Sports has been using for decades now. I mean, I remember when I was a little kid,
Iconic.
like you said, that was the best thing. Like you wait up till even well after the game's over. It's a highlight reel of all the crazy moments from the March Madness tournament, played to that song. And so then you put that in with that, and then were you timing it up? How you putting it?
Yeah,
How you putting it together?
that was the other part of the notes process, was like really getting the sort of like, again, when you build those things, you want the jokes to hit on like with the music, and
Yeah.
so it was a lot of that. But yeah, I mean, that song is like, if you hear the words "the ball is tipped," I get chills.
Yeah.
Like that first line, it's like immediate. And another cool thing of the process is like my wife had no referential context to One Shining Moment, and she watched it again like in a complete vacuum of like not knowing the reverence that song has, and
Right.
having never heard that song. And she was like, "This is hilarious. That song is ridiculous."
Yeah.
So it worked on multiple levels. It wasn't just a nod to sports fans. I
Right.
think and I think that's one of the reasons why it probably went as viral as it did, because
Yeah.
you can, if you're not a sports fan, it's still really funny.
Yeah, it is funny. And I think to people like us, like you and me, people our age, guys especially, probably like that's an instant, we instantly recognize it and takes you to a certain place in time. And then all of a sudden usually you're used to seeing great, great athletic plays, and all of a sudden you're seeing funny
Yeah, like you see
presidential
Trump with toilet paper on the bottom of his shoe walking up the steps of Air Force One, and it's just like, it's the same as like Jimmer Fredette hitting a buzzer beater three. It's like the same, it's the
uh,
same concept. Yeah, man, it was fun, and I had like very little, I had very little experience sort of dipping my toe and like trying to like chase viral video fame.
yeah,
Not that was the goal, but like I knew that this idea had some legs, and it's just about doing it. And like I said to you again before we started rolling, it like harkened back to our fun 20s of like, you know, sketch con, and like, like pulling together whatever money any of us had to like put together a sketch on video. And this was days before our phones were like 4D cameras. Like
right.
we had to, like, somebody had to have a camera, somebody had to have mics, and like, like our
A
friend John
light.
Murray had like a crappy lavalier mic that we used for like every sketch that we shot. And so it really had that like grassroots kind of feel that like when we were in our 20s, like pulling together fun stand-up promo videos, or pulling together sketches, like trying to be SNL, and
Yeah.
all of us trying to get hired on shows like that. Like it just felt like that, and it was like 20 years later. So it was just so much fun.
Yeah, it was a good feeling. And I totally can see how it had that feeling, but I also think it really had a feeling of like that professional polish of a piece of, a comedy bit from a late night TV show. I almost thought you really kind of scooped all the late night shows. I bet
Thanks.
every writer's room, the head writer was probably like, where's that pitch? you know?
Well, it's so funny is I worked for Charlemagne the God on his late night show, on Common Sense on MTV, and his like mantra was always that and people say it, but the internet is undefeated. And so like, again, in these days where like the internet's always going to scoop the late night shows for the most part, and so it was cool to kind of like have a hand in that, and be able to like not be employed by a late night show, but still make that quality
Yeah.
of a piece of content, and have it resonate, was really cool. But when you talk about polish too, it makes me think, it's one of the personally gratifying things for me was, having worked in TV for 20 years, which is wild to say now. You work with so many amazingly talented professionals who, like I said, want to be doing the fun stuff.
Yeah.
And so when I reached out to the two individuals who like helped cut it and research it, like they like, we all have this like Rolodex, whether you recognize it or not, of these amazingly talented professionals. And that's like almost, like any job I go to, my favorite part is putting the team together, putting the staff together, and because
Yeah.
there's so many amazing professionals that we've all worked with. And it's the fun part of working in TV is you're project to project. So you meet all these, it's not the same people every time. You're working with like a million different people, like lighting people and sound people and editors and set designers and all these people that like in a pinch you can call and be like, hey, can you build me this? Can you research this for me? Can you cut this for me? I'll buy you a 6-pack of beer. I can't tell you how many times I've been like, hey, can you just like, punch up and I'll buy you a beer. Like people are happy to use their skill if they have the time. And so I definitely found that with this, and I was super grateful to my collaborators. But yeah, man,
Yeah.
I appreciate the kind words.
Oh yeah, it was. I'm telling you, as someone just who viewed it and came upon it really in a happenstance way. I follow you on Twitter, obviously, and I saw you retweet it. We'll talk about in a second how it really took off. But I saw it and I was like, damn, that is so funny. I was just like,
Yeah.
I was happy for you, just that you got it done.
Well, that was the cool part too, is the people who would reach out to me and say, hey, this was you. I've been seeing this in my feed for 2 days. And so the organic discoveries were really cool moments for me. Each of those that I got, because I would get a couple, like people would put two and two together, or notice that when I put it up and saying, like, kind of taking credit for it.
Yeah.
People were like, holy shit, that's you. This has been in my feed for days. And I was like, those were the good ones, like the organic ones. Because
Yeah.
believe me, I sent it to enough, I sent it to every heavy hitter that I knew. Because again, I was just like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to like call in some favors.
Yeah. Yeah. You're leaning into it. All right. So let's get to that. You got the video done. You're ready to go. Oh, by the way, do you want to mention the other the folks, the people that helped you, or do they want to stay like under the radar on this?
Yeah, sadly, that again, it's just like it's very partisan, and so I think
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to.
some
I
people
just
don't
didn't
want to
want to
be
get
associated. Yeah, it's all good. Some people just don't want to be associated, sort of like
yeah,
overtly with. Not that they're not proud of it; they're very excited about it. But we sort of agreed to all kind. I'll just be the vocal
yeah,
face of it.
yeah,
And
sure. I get it. I get it. But I got to tell you too, it didn't strike me as that overly partisan. I thought it was really
yeah, it was
funny.
more comedy.
It was comedy, and
Yeah.
that's the other thing. I guess as far as like scooping the late night shows go, I feel like a lot of the late night comedy around Trump has not been really that comedy based. It was almost more like just we hate this guy based, and it was sometimes
Yeah.
funny, but a lot of times I was like, this isn't
Well,
that
it
actually.
got. I think my one of my best friends, Matt Goldich, is a monologue writer for Seth, and we did the podcast for years together, and I think it just got really hard for any of them
Yeah,
to just be funny and not have opinion seep in, and not have judgment seep in, and not have like anger seep in. And you watch Colbert, and there's no, it's completely there's no gray area.
yeah,
I think Fallon tries to be just funny about it, because his wheelhouse isn't to be a wonk about
yeah,
all this stuff. It's just really hard, because you're going to get crap from the hard left if you're just being funny about it. They're like, no, you need to take this seriously, that he is breaking the emoluments clause.
yeah.
It's just like, no, we just want to make a really funny,
Right.
like, I'm all about jokes.
Which
I
people,
just
yeah, exactly, and that's what I thought really was good about this. There was, you could tell it was straight up all about jokes. And just you mentioned Fallon. I mean, you saw what happened to him after he had that incident where he was messing around with Trump's hair
Yeah,
on that one appearance, and he got
people aren't here for it.
what's that?
Yeah, people just don't want to see
Yeah,
people. They don't want to see that right now,
yeah,
or for the last few years.
yeah.
But again, like there's that hilarious side to the last 4 years. Like, if you can take
Agreed.
a step back and like not be so emotionally. And look, there is a lot of the last 4 years that make me so angry. But there's hilarity in so much of it.
Yeah,
Uh, and so, yeah, that again, just like go back to how the idea came up. It was just like a friend who had some cash to invest said like, what's funny? Like what can we do here that like can get some attention? That's it. Like
Yeah.
that was the filter through which we made this, was
Yeah.
how can we get some eyeballs and what's going to be really funny.
Well, you got millions of eyeballs. I mean, this thing got millions of views. Probably, I know it was on Facebook, it was on Twitter, it was on YouTube for a little while before it got taken down. We'll talk about that. But let's talk about how you did make it go so viral. Obviously, it was good, but you got to get it seen
Yeah.
by enough
Yeah.
people.
So it was cool. Again, like I was dipping my toe in that water, but I do kind of, having worked on certain shows that have social media departments, you pick up a few pointers here and there. And I had some really smart people to consult with on, like how, if I want to get this to like really be seen, because like I have 15,000 followers on Twitter. I have a blue check. It doesn't mean that much. If I just put it up, I think, it would have done okay. Like for me, would have maybe like 100, couple hundred views here and there. But there's a few certain times, like obviously I'm a big wrestling fan, and every once in a while I'll have like a tweet or something, or something I want to say that I think is pretty profound in that little scope. And that's when I'll DM. I'm not shy to say that every once in a while I'll DM a really funny a tweet that I think is really funny to some heavy hitters, to kind of like broadcast it. And so I kind of used that strategy again with this. I knew this was good. I knew this was funny, and I knew if it got out there, it would kind of. I kind of was pretty confident. I knew it was going to blow up if it could get seen. And so a couple things. So I DM'd it to a crap load of people, many of whom are, I have like a good like one or two handful of like semi heavy hitters on social media.
Yeah.
Just having worked in entertainment for 20 years, you have some people. And then I took some swings. I took some big swings. And so Rex Chapman, the former NBA player, the former sharpshooter sniper from
Yeah.
the NBA, Kentucky Wildcat, I believe,
Yeah.
he has
Being in
weirdly,
college too. He was
yeah,
famous
he is.
in college.
So he has weirdly had this like insane second career of like being this insanely influential aggregator of memes and funny video that he kind of, amplifies, and he's got this huge following because of it. And his DMs are open. So that's like if we're looking for takeaways from this, it's just
Yeah.
like look for those big sort of aggregators that keep their DMs open for
Right.
content.
But that's also, it's, on Twitter, it doesn't necessarily just say his DMs are open, right? Or maybe it does. I don't even know. Or did you
Well,
have to
I
like
mean,
go and investigate
you
that a
have to go
little?
to you have to go to his profile and just check that, it'll either have the envelope or it won't. And if it
Yeah.
has the envelope, you can DM him.
There you
So
go.
I hit him, and I was just like, hey man, I mean, some version of this, it was like, hey man, as somebody who experienced March Madness and in the highs, and something like, as somebody who experienced March Madness as a Wildcat, and somebody is who is sort of not a fan of the president, I
Yeah.
think you'll enjoy this on multiple levels. If you find it funny, I would love for you to post it. If not, no worries. But here you go. Enjoy. This is Dumb Shining Moment. Um, I sent him the YouTube link. I know I sent him my tweet, my original tweet,
Right.
because my secret hope was that he would post my tweet, because then
Right.
that would like help me with followers. Not that I mean, I'm in my 40s. I don't care. I'm not an influencer, but it would have been cool if he posted my
Sure.
tweet with the link. But he does, his business is he took the link, put it up, and he said, "Dumb Shining Moment, you're welcome," with the link. And
And it blew
what a
up.
world we live in, where Rex Chapman from the Phoenix Suns because is like this huge amplifier of content. But I mean, from there it blew up. Obviously, I had some help. I got some really good co-signs from like Neil Brennan posted it, which was like huge for me because I'm a huge fan, and some wrestler buddies of mine posted it who have some pretty big followings, and
Yeah.
um,
So just to,
I think like Michelle Beadle, like Michelle Beadle from ESPN. It's just like some weird random people who have some big mega followings that I
yeah.
know posted it for me, and everybody was so generous. Again, like, and then comedians, like I DM'd it to so many comedians, and my message was always, if you think this is funny, I would love for you to share it. If you don't, no worries. Like,
Yeah.
it was never, and so luckily, every people saw the comedy in it, and everybody was so generous with like using their feeds to amplify it, and it across multiple platforms, from Twitter and Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, before it was taken down. You could probably say it's over 3 million, and
Oh, it's
that's
got to
probably
be.
being,
I think
yeah.
Rex's tweet alone has 2.7 million.
Yeah. So,
And
and then the whole thing with YouTube taking it down. Look, we knew that was going to happen because we used the music without getting any.
right. So you didn't license the
We
song.
didn't license the music. That would have kind of like tripled our budget.
Yeah.
And so we knew it was going to come down, but like it was still up for like 3, 4, 5 days, and
Yeah.
it got up. It had a bunch of views, and it's cool. That's something you go in knowing that that's going to happen, but you take those precautions. I have the embedded video. I can send it, to
Right.
whomever. Still, I think I might repost it on inauguration day. Just be like, yo, this is still relevant.
Yeah. Right. So as we're taping this conversation, we're just on the cusp of
Oh,
inauguration.
right. Sorry, I don't want to date wherever you post this, but and also it's pinned to my Twitter, which
Yeah.
anybody can go see, because this crazy Robert De Niro parody Twitter account posted it, and he posted the embedded video. And sometimes I think he gets suspended a bunch off of Twitter, so sometimes you'll see the video, sometimes you won't. But that's another way to kind of always see it.
Right. So let's talk. So also Rex Chapman, 1.1 million followers. So he was getting it out to a really wide audience. And then, like I said too, I was seeing a lot of news people that I follow were just retweeting it, and it just kept popping up in my Twitter feed. And I was like, wow, this thing really has some legs.
Right. And then you see like SNL did like a version of it. So it kind of like it infiltrated people's consciousness.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I bet that people there saw that and were like, "This is great." Maybe they didn't. I don't know. I don't know what happened there, but on some level, it had to have influenced them, whether they were conscious of it or not.
Yeah, and I'm not one of those people that they stole my joke. No, it's just like we're all shared brains. We're all working with the same pool of ridiculousness, and it's it's by no means the most original premise in the world. So, but it is cool to know that like that I'm on the wavelength of what's being produced on the late night shows, because I'm sort of I'm doing other things.
You weren't just on the wavelength. I think you nailed it. I think, like I said, I think you scooped every late night show right in election season, which is really like that's their Super Bowl almost. That's Andrew, that reminded me of going back to like, watching Letterman throughout the years, and he would often do like presidential gaffes, and I think Bush like choked on the second George W. Bush choked on a pretzel and ended up with a black eye, and I remember Letterman doing that stuff, and his dad, I think George H.W. Bush, threw up, if you remember that, back in like threw up. I was at a Japanese state dinner, and he threw up on a Japanese government official. Obama, I think he got some injuries playing basketball, and they spoofed that. But this was just as good, if not better, than some
of the classic shoe being thrown at GW Bush. That was
exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, again, it's not the most original idea, but I just knew that the combination of the referential knowledge that people have of that song, the fact that we missed out on hearing that song this year, so people were like craving it and wanting it. And then obviously the zeitgeist moment of the build of Trump, like all this ridiculousness, and not the political stuff, but just like the physical comedy of Trump.
Sure. And at that point, there's probably a lot of fatigue among people, and this was pure comic relief. So you nailed it. So let me ask you this. What are you thinking, right? So as it's blowing up, Rex Chapman posted, all these other people are tweeting it. It's going crazy. You're seeing millions of views rack up. What are you thinking? How's that feel?
It was cool. I mean, again, I am in a house in suburban New Jersey now with my wife and my 2-year-old. And like, that's my pod for the most part. I mean, it's her family too, a little bit. But it was just like this jolt of adrenaline, this jolt of excitement that I hadn't been able to kind of have because of sort of isolation and quarantine. Like it was an adrenaline rush for like 2 days because like I just remember like posting it and then doing the like outreach, like
Yeah.
sending it to a billion people, and then just started seeing like the numbers click up, click up, click up, and like every kind of free moment while chasing my son around was like going back to my laptop and pressing refresh to be like boom, and like on Twitter like, oh, this person just found it and this person just posted it, and then like I said too, like the coolest part was the emails and DMs of like, yo, this is you, and like those organic discoveries, the people
Yeah.
who discovered it organically, like you, those felt the best. That was
Yeah.
like the coolest. And then again, like cosigns from people like Neil Brennan, like, you know, I sent it to him, and I said like, dude, if you think this is funny, I would love for you to throw it out to your followers. But if you don't, no worries. And he wrote back, he's like, this is really great, dude. And then he started asking me questions of how I made it, like how much, you know, because
Yeah.
he's like a producer nerd too. So
Yeah.
but that was cool. It was all just it was like a 3 day adrenaline rush to like ride the wave.
Yeah. Got to be satisfying, right?
Yeah, the only other thing I compare it to is if you remember when, because I used to live right by Webster Hall, and if you remember when Kanye was supposed to do that concert,
Yeah.
I think, and he and basically all of the street right outside Webster Hall, which was right outside my bedroom window at the time, just was full of basically like 1,000 hip hop fans who were, because he announced at Summer Jam or whatever that he was going to do a free late night, you know, midnight concert at Webster Hall. So all these hip hop kids like showed up on the street outside my bedroom window. And so I took a bunch of photos of it and I put it up on Twitter and Facebook, and the news outlets found it and started posting it and using it in their stories. Like I basically had the photo of record for that news.
Yeah.
And so I
That
wrote
news
that
event.
news cycle
Yeah.
of like, holy, and the picture went super viral. My mistake there was I didn't license the photo because I
Yeah.
probably could have made some cash there. But again, I
Yeah.
didn't know those things at those time. But that was like the only other time I kind of felt I kind of had a wave to ride of
Yeah.
like, oh, something I did kind of caught on, and now,
So this is
like I said, you're riding a wave.
what year did that happen?
I'd have to look back. I think, let's see, that's 2 apartments ago for me. That's, I would say, almost 4 years ago,
Yeah.
probably.
So like, I was gonna say right
Simpler
around.
times.
Yeah.
Simpler times.
Yeah. Simpler times and not even that long ago. Um, right. You were essentially like the Associated Press for that that
Yeah,
story.
but that kind of stuff happens to people all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
like, look at the Capitol riots. I mean, anybody who snapped a really useful photo, even if they were a journalist or not,
Yeah.
could probably have licensed that photo to the news and gotten, you know, and gotten it out there. But I was just literally just in my bedroom window, like, holy crap, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was a time, like I said, simpler times. Like that's when Kanye was not this divisive figure. Like he was the biggest
Yeah.
star in hip hop who descended upon Webster Hall. So
Yeah.
it's cool.
Yeah, it's great, man. So congrats on that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I was happy to see it, and you got to post that again. And so what we'll try to do here is I'm going to try to post a short clip of it here, so people can, for anyone who hasn't seen it, if you haven't seen it, we'll post a little clip here, but then I'll include a link at the bottom. So let's take a quick look at maybe just 10 seconds of it, so we don't get it ripped down. That'll happen right now. Let's see. Of your heart, feel the wind in your face. It's more than a contest. It's more than a race. So there it is. That's just a short taste of it, but you can find it on Andrew's Twitter feed, which will be down below in the comments.
At Ange Gold, ANGEGOLD.
Yeah, I'll put that on the screen too, so everyone sees it. But yeah, super awesome. And
thanks, man. I appreciate the love, and look, you do something like that and you start thinking like, oh man, maybe this could be my business. Like, could
Yeah.
I start a production company and just like do like comedy videos and kind of like try to be this like chase the viral thing constantly? But I don't, that's maybe
For a
a
younger
younger
guy.
version of me
Yeah.
would look into doing that. But it is intoxicating when you're riding that wave. I can see why why influencers are a thing and why these sort of aggregate, why they do it, because it is fun. It
Yeah.
was really
Oh,
fun.
I believe it. I mean, my best tweet ever was like 700 retweets,
So
and
much fun.
yeah, and like, so I can't imagine like going into the millions, like that would be,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's gotta be,
I mean, again, like I kind of have like a weird niche. Most of my followers are weird wrestling fans, and I love when like I nail, like the other day I there was a picture from the impeachment hearings of some senator wearing this like bizarro like bright blue pinstripe suit with an orange tie, and he
Mhm.
looked like Vince McMahon. And I tweeted this picture, and he had blonde hair, so he looked like this wrestler Finley. So I tweeted a picture of him, and I said it looks like if Finley lost a loser must dress like Vince McMahon match, and it went
I saw
crazy
that.
because
Yeah.
like one wrestler, my buddy MVP,
Yeah.
from my time at WWE, my buddy MVP retweeted it, and then that blew up, and that was just like, it got to about 1,000 views, 1,000 likes. But like, again, like it just gives you some, again, in isolation, quarantine, whatever you call it, it does give you kind of like I, if I have a free moment, I look at my phone and refresh and get like, you just get this like instant sort of gratification,
Yeah.
which is so valuable right now in whatever state you are of taking care of yourself
Yeah. But
during COVID.
after doing one that got millions of views, is 1,000 likes? Does that get
It's
you
still
excited
fun.
anymore? Or
Yeah, it's
are you
still
all
fun.
jaded now? Like, I
No,
got 1,000
absolutely
likes.
not. Look, I can fully tell you, like from the heart, and recognize that Twitter and Facebook and Instagram are ruining the fabric of the world, but I love it.
Yes.
I love, I mean, without Twitter, I spend so much time on Twitter for sports and for just so, it's just such a great, I mean,
It's a
I
great
like
idea.
I doom scroll before I go to bed. Like I can't go to sleep without sort of like 20 minutes of reading Twitter and, getting pissed off about the Sixers. And it just gives you an out. I mean, on the bad side, it gives you an outlet to like share your opinion, but on the good side, it gives you an outlet to share your opinion. But
Yeah.
what we've learned is that not everybody has opinions that are useful.
Yeah. Or is just responsible about the way they share them. I,
Yeah. So I mean, look, I use it for fun stuff
yeah.
and stuff I care about, but people have obviously bastardized, you weaponized it.
Yep.
But we don't need to get into all that. But like I said, there's the duality of like I
Yeah.
recognize that it's super harmful, but I just am obsessed with
But
it.
there is, and I agree though. It is in many ways it's very harmful, and it's people use it poorly. Do I think that's Twitter's fault? No. Um, but also there's this great side of it. There are still people doing cool things on Twitter. You as an example, but lots of others as well. And I've
I
been
mean,
trying to
the
like focus
fact
on those more.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that you and I are speaking sort of 20 years after being NBC Pages together, and in and out of sort of like the only kind of thing that keeps you and I in touch is Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like the
It really
occasional
is.
DM, and if you post something and I like it, or it's just that like wink wink, like okay, like Tavani's still my guy,
Yeah.
and so those are the good things. I just got a physical written like sort of holiday greeting card from a guy I went to college with, who I interact with very sporadically on social media, because he's a wrestling fan and whatever. But and he just sent me like a note just saying like, hey man, it's a new year, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate our interactions, and it brings me joy, and I hope you're well, and I hope your family's, and it was just like such a nice thing. And it's like
Yeah.
that's the cool part. That's what social media was supposed to be about. It was supposed to be this like way to keep in touch with people and way to have those interactions. And so I kind of just like focus on that part.
Yeah, I try to too, and I think there also. I think it was for sharing fun videos. Like I remember 5 years ago, Twitter was more about viral videos and like
Yeah.
silly stuff that wasn't like the Capitol being attacked by protesters. Like
Twitter used to be so much more fun.
yeah, like I mean, I remember like the dress. You remember the dress? Like that was one of my
Of
favorite
course.
things ever on Twitter. Like I'm seeing white and gold, and everyone else is seeing blue and black, or not everyone, half the people. That was the best thing ever.
Yeah, that
We
was
spoke.
partisanship. If that was that was as partisan as we got, was blue
I
dress or
know,
gold dress.
I know that, like you said, simpler times, way simpler times.
Way simpler times.
All right, let's move along because we gotta. I know you got to get going,
Sure.
but you've alluded to it a few times here, but you've got a really interesting career. One thing I wanted to talk to you about was your time working for WWE. You were a writer for World Wrestling Entertainment, and I am not a
Wild.
fan of wrestling. I know a little bit about it here and there, so some of your jokes, like that one on Twitter, fly right over my head. But I remember talking to you some years ago, and you were telling me about that job, and it sounded crazy. So, like, let's talk about that. Like, tell us what it was
Yeah.
like, how that works. I know you were flying around on Vince McMahon's private jet all around the
Yeah.
country. That's got to
Well,
be
what's
something.
wild about it is that it's 12 years ago at this point. Like to me, because I still kind of live in it because of social media, and there's like an audience for that kind of perspective. It's wild to me that was 12 years ago. But yeah, man, I got that job very early on in being after like having like one or two writing credits, and it was wild. I mean, the way I describe it is I was like it just felt like I was the bat boy on my favorite baseball team. Like I've been watching wrestling since 1986, and and to be in the midst of like at the writing team was like a bunch of nerds like me, but then it also was former wrestlers who were there to sort of be the sort of technical advisors.
Yeah.
And so I was in a writer's room with Dusty Rhodes, who was like literally my favorite of all time, and like Million Dollar Man Ted DiBiase, and then you'd get to, and like Brother Love were like in the writer, and Michael P.S. Hayes, and then you get to TV, and you'd have not only all the guys on the current roster, but you'd have all what were called agents, which were like the backstage retired wrestlers who helped put the matches together. So you'd be in a production meeting, and it was like Sergeant Slaughter's at the table, and IRS, Mike Rotundo was it? Like all these wrestlers from my childhood were like my colleagues. So it was just wild.
And so when you're
Like
in
I
one of
said,
those
like
meetings, how many people are in there? Like, what's the?
they were big at TV. When look, the schedule is roughly like, let's just, if you use a pay-per-view week, right? So we would fly out on Vince's jet, let's say Sunday morning, get to whatever town you were in, go right to the arena. You'd work all day. The pay-per-view would happen. Then you'd get in your rental car and you drive to the next town. You'd do Raw. Then you'd get in the car, drive to the next town, do SmackDown on Tuesday, and then you'd get back on Vince's plane, or every once in a while we had to slum it and go on a commercial flight, and then you'd fly home, and then you go right to the office and write the next week's shows on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So that was kind of the schedule. But when you were at TV, a pay-per-view or Raw or SmackDown, when I was there, the writers team was about 10, 12 people. And then there were probably, you double that in terms of like agents and former wrestlers that kind of were collaborators. Plus you had the hierarchy, which were like the two head writers, the executive producer sort of on the production side, this guy Kevin Dunn, and then you have Vince McMahon. And then at the time when I was there, Stephanie McMahon ran the creative team. She has since moved on to sort of a more corporate role, and so that was sort of the front table. The dais was like Vince, Kevin, Stephanie, and the two head writers of Raw and SmackDown, and then we all sat at like tables in front of that dais.
So is that
taking notes and giving suggestions and whatever.
So it's almost like a TV pitch meeting where they're sitting up there and you're saying, here's an
Yeah,
idea.
well, so they would have the script that we had put together earlier in the week. They would have the running script, but oftentimes, because Vince McMahon is a crazy evil genius, oftentimes the show would be completely rewritten in that production meeting, and
Wow.
then all the plans that you just spent all week putting together were like scrapped, and then you'd have to scramble to like rewrite the show and get to your talent and be like, okay, this is what you're doing, and like it would be like right before they had to walk out, you'd be like, okay, you're doing a promo about this now. You're not doing what we told you earlier you were going to do, or you're
Yeah.
wrestling this guy now, you're not wrestling this guy anymore, or you're going to lose, but you're going to beat him up after you lose, like things like that. Like
Yeah.
it was it was a runaway freight train for what, like 9 months, and then it was over.
And then and so why are you scrapping these plans? Because Vince all of a sudden changes his mind or doesn't like
Yeah,
an
there's
idea.
no other there's literally no other logical reason. It was just because, from the time sort of during the week when we would pitch these ideas to Vince and he would sign off on them, to either him reading through it on the plane to the arena or at TV in the production meeting. A million things have gone through his head, and so he might read the same script that he signed off on 12 hours ago, and he reads it and says, "This is horseshit." And
Yeah.
completely change the entire show. It's
Yeah.
as if, yeah, it's like SNL, but if
But
even
you're
crazier.
but you're traveling around the country doing it.
Yeah, yeah, and you're doing it every Monday and Tuesday, with, yeah, in the same way that SNL makes changes right up until air.
Sure.
It's the same. It's like that.
But at least when you're at SNL, you're not like flying from one place and then
Yeah,
getting in the car and
they're
driving.
grounded at 30 Rock. Like we
Yeah.
were, like my last week, my last week before I got back and was, they let me go. It was, I think I was in like Topeka and Wichita.
Yeah.
So you're doing like cities that you can drive to. So you'd fly to like, in Albuquerque, and then you do a show there, and then you drive to Santa Fe, and then you drive to like Tempe, Arizona, and then you'd fly home.
Wow.
So I mean, and that was like the cool part, because like you'd have these late night drives with like your fellow writers, or like every once in a while I'd be like in a limo with Paul Heyman and Dusty Rhodes, and eventually you get to ask them like a million questions and be like a fanboy. So
Yeah.
for me, again, having been a huge wrestling fan, that was like that. Those were the best parts. Were
That is
like
cool.
getting to kind of know the legends.
Yeah. And then flying on Vince McMahon's jet, what is that like? What's his private jet like?
Nuts. Air McMahon, it was nuts. I don't think writers have access to his jet anymore, but during my time we did. He's a very super quirky person, and it's one of those sort of sort of trite Hollywood things where like they won't tell you sort of the quirks when you get hired. You kind of have to figure them out for yourself. And so there's things like, around the seats, there'll be like a can of peanuts, and nobody tells you not. Some people, I think, not even thinking, would just like put their hand in the can of peanuts to scoop out the nuts to eat them. That's a huge no-no to Vince, who's a big germaphobe. You have to grab the can and pour them out into your other hand. And so like if he caught you, if he saw like your hand going in and in like a can of beer nuts, he would go ballistic. Or like if you
Did
there
you
were
ever make
things
that
like,
mistake, Andrew?
I didn't make that mistake, but I made quite a few. I had Vince McMahon yell at me this close to my face.
Oh my God. Why
Nobody
was he
needs
yelling
that in
at
their
you?
life. He didn't like something that I produced. So here's again, I could tell a million stories, but the thing I say about that job always, I've said it on a million wrestling podcasts, is I got that job way too early in my career. I got that job at like 25,
Yeah.
having very little experience, and I was completely intimidated. I can look back now and say, like, man, I was so intimidated.
Sure. I
Um,
mean,
there was like one time in front of, like, I had to go straight to Vince and like have him dictate a promo to me. Then I was writing it, and like I was so nervous, I dropped the pen in front of him, which was like he kind of just sort of lost all. He's an alpha. He's like a
Yeah.
king alpha, alpha, alpha. So he just saw weakness and then just sort of like sold. He was
Yeah.
like bought. He like had bought into me at one point, and then he kind of was like, okay, sell. And then it was not too long after that you kind of go through 3-month renewals, and
Yeah.
they didn't renew me, but all that to say, I got the job way too early in my career, and I think if I took that job now or even like 10 years ago, I would have crushed it. But I just didn't have the confidence to be going up to guys like Booker T and JBL and Batista and the Undertaker and being like, hey guys, here's what you're doing. Like I just didn't have the confidence. Whereas now I'd walk up to him and be like, all right guys, let's go. Like here's what we're doing. This is the idea. You put it in your own words. Like if I can help in it, like there's just ways to do it that I just didn't have that savvy. I didn't have that I didn't have that confidence.
Yeah.
So I was just like a little pipsqueak running up to these guys.
I mean, you're young. That is young. Being 25, doing that.
Just
That's
so
that.
young.
Yeah. And it's tough. And obviously, any TV show probably is tough to some degree. But I think with a personality like Vince McMahon. Now, was he a wrestler? Did he also wrestle at some
He
point?
has, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like Leighton is, I mean, he was the announcer for all those years,
Right.
and then sort of took over the company from his father, and then he was running the company, but also the announcer. But then during like in the early '90s, what's called the Attitude Era, where his character of the announcer sort of morphed into it got revealed during this moment called the Montreal Screwjob. It got revealed that Vince is actually the owner of the company, and it was kind of the breaking of the fourth wall for the audience. It was just like,
Right.
oh, holy shit, this guy that we've been listening to when we were kids is like that guy is cutting the checks, and then he sort of morphed into this Mr. McMahon evil CEO character,
Right.
and it just was the perfect storm because they had Stone Cold Steve Austin, who was anti-authority, and it ended up being the biggest thing that wrestling's ever seen was Mr. McMahon versus Stone Cold Steve Austin,
Right.
and it blew up. And then he, of course, because of that, ended up wrestling many matches.
Vince came back and wrestled.
He started wrestling, yeah, because the storylines inevitably would be like at some point Steve Austin has to get his hands on Vince McMahon, so they would have.
Now, is this what was going on when you were there?
No, I was after the Attitude Era. I was 2006. So I was kind of there at what people would call kind of a lame, like a downturn in business. Not many memorable, not a very memorable time period. There's kind of a lull. It's like the rise of John Cena.
Oh yeah. Well, he's pretty well known.
Kind of,
I know if I know who he is, then he's.
yeah, I mean, he became huge, but like there weren't those indelible moments of like Steve, Rock versus Austin, or Rock, the Montreal Screwjob, or like Flair Steamboat. There weren't those iconic moments. Like Cena had a number of them. He had 10. Basically, Cena had 10 years on top of like the company, but never like in the way that Hulk Hogan or The Rock or Steve Austin were.
Yeah. And were Austin and The Rock there, or were they had they moved on?
No, both of them were gone. Again, like I said, I got there at a time post all of that really fun stuff that really caught on.
Yeah.
I mean, we had really great talent, but it wasn't. It was kind of like like on SNL, like there's a couple years where like they're kind of waiting for that next great cast member to come along.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I always thought it was a super interesting job that you had, and it also sounded insanely grueling. It sounded like you never got a day off for.
No, and that's the ironic thing about what I said about like, oh, I got the job way too early in my career, and if I got the job within the last 10 years, I would have crushed it. I can say that, but also know that, well, if I did get the job in the last 10 years, I wouldn't have been able to do it because it requires a full travel schedule. And like, if you're trying to start a family or like dating somebody serious, like there's no way you have no life. Like even when you're home, you're on these like epically long conference calls and it never stops. And now it's worse than when I was there because they have so much more programming. I mean, they're 3 hours on Monday. They're an hour on Wednesday with NXT. Then on Friday, they're 2 hours of SmackDown. If there's a pay-per-view on Sunday, that's like a 3 hour show. then they have the network, and they have their original shows on the network, and all
And
these like supplemental shows. Like they're constantly, it's insane what they produce.
yeah. But you're still watching it a fair amount then, right? You're still a
Yeah, I
fan?
kind of just, it's like Brokeback Mountain. I can't quit it. I'm too invested. I have like a text chain with some really close friends that like brings me so much joy. Again, in quarantine, in isolation, like
Yeah.
to have those sort of, I'm sure everybody has their text chains with their friends about different topics, and so my wrestling text chain is like a constant daily source of fun for me. And again, being able to like engage with people on Twitter is so much fun, and it just gives me like this pool of content to kind of be a wink wink quasi expert on. It's fun. And the current project that I'm on right now actually has to do with wrestling, oddly enough, and that's been really fun to like professionally, again, all these years later, be like professionally caring about wrestling. So
Yeah. And what is it? What's the project you're working on?
so on Vice, there is a very popular, very successful documentary series called Dark Side of the Ring. It's a like I said, documentary series that are these hour long storytelling docs of really tragic stories in the world of wrestling, which
Wow.
sadly there are many. And so they're shooting the third season now. And so in the run up to the new third season, they wanted to take the first two seasons and kind of give them like a new polish. And so I am running what's called Dark Side of the Ring Uncensored. So we're doing like director's cut commentary, like roundtables that will be at the top and tail of each act of eight of the most popular episodes from the first two seasons. There will be an extra 22:30 of content that I produce with
Wow.
the creators and with a host sitting at a round table, basically updating the stories and giving context to the stories and like telling anecdotes about the making of and all that. You know, basically, if you ever watch a documentary, you come away with so many unanswered questions. Well, this would be a way to watch the documentary, but be getting those answers like
Yep.
at the end of each act. So it's been really fun, but they're dealing with these really esoteric stories in wrestling history, which of course I know and I love, but never in my wildest dreams did I think that I'd ever be professionally caring about the Von Erichs, you know, the
Yeah.
five of six brothers died, or like dealing with like the mysterious death of Bruiser Brody, which happened in fucking 1986, you
Yeah.
know? Like
So
it's
essentially
crazy.
making this all like accessible to maybe a non-wrestling audience or a very
Yeah, I
casual.
mean, if you watch the documentary having never even put an eye on any piece of wrestling content, I think you'd still be really enthralled and engaged. Like the documentary is incredible. These guys are so talented. They're so artistic, and I'm just like a small part of the universe to be doing these extra shows. But it's been fun, and they're going to drop around like March, April. So we're in post now, and again, everything's virtual. So I'm home, just like
Working in your
talking to these
basement.
people. And
Yeah.
yep, yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. So March, April it
So
comes out.
wrestling just finds a way to come back into my life.
It's good. It's good. And you said something earlier, which I don't think I knew, or maybe I knew it, but forgot it. You worked with Charlemagne the God. Talk about that a little.
Yeah,
What did you do with him?
he's awesome. He was great. I wrote and produced a show for him called Uncommon Sense, which was a weekly late night show that started on MTV2 and then kind of migrated to MTV. But what's cool about that show is it was basically real time with Bill Maher, but with Charlemagne and his friends.
Yeah.
Is the best way to describe it. And you see now, like he's on CNN, he's on
Yeah.
Colbert, like he's sort of taken this sort of more serious edge, this more like commentary edge. But what's really cool about it is if you look back, and some people have posted the clips, we had some conversations on that show that predate BLM, that predate a lot of the discourse from the last 4 years. And we had some like really important conversations on that show that were happening on MTV2 that were kind of just like ignore,
Yeah, under
nobody,
the radar. Yeah.
completely under the radar. But you look back at some of those conversations that we had, and it's all about the stuff that it was prophetic, because like 2-3 years later, people were marching on Washington to get to have, systematic racism be recognized. And so
Yeah.
those were things we were talking about at the table in a funny way, but also in a serious way to bring those topics to the fore. But he's amazing. He is really problematic to some people, and he's just one of those people that is willing to listen to other perspectives, but he certainly is not going to sugarcoat anything. Like, he will much rather get fired than
Sure.
be
He's
be told what to say.
yeah.
So that was fun as a writer, because we really
Gives-
like push the envelope.
Yeah, it gives you a lot of latitude. Lets you be creative, right?
Yeah. And it was, it was really cool. And I love seeing how sort of successful he's become, and sort of how he's kind of the go-to for he's like on Ari Melber's show on MSNBC, and then you flip
Yeah.
on CNN, and it's
Yeah, I
like
see him on CNN.
he's this guy. So I love it. And apparently he's going to have a show on Comedy Central. So
Oh,
we'll see. But that was it was fun. It was a really cool, and to like gain his trust, as a white, at the time I was like white, like 35-year-old Jewish kid, to be like writing for somebody as like in the fucking sorry,
yeah.
in the culture as much as he is, like,
Yeah.
it's not easy. And I get, to gain his trust, it's sort of that, like, my first joke writing job was for Patrice O'Neal, the late great, on a
Yeah.
show called Web Junk 20, which was the precursor to Tosh.0. It was the VH1 version of the same show. It was viral videos.
Yeah.
Actually, kind of like full circle moment here. My first joke writing job was on a viral video show with Patrice O'Neal called Web Junk. And again, I was like a 20, whatever, 4 or 5, 6-year-old white Jewish kid who had no business writing for Patrice O'Neal. But I kind of just like got in there. I got hired, and I gained his respect, and gained his, like, okay, this kid's funny. And that kind of gave me like a boost of confidence that I still kind of lean on today. Like, if I, like, I remember interviewing at Late Night with Jimmy Fallon for a writing job, which I didn't get, but it's not the point of the story. Is not that I got the job, but it was just like, to walk in, you have to have some amount of confidence.
Sure.
And it was just like, look, man, I made Patrice O'Neal laugh. Like, I can make Jimmy Fallon laugh. And
Yeah.
I use that. I kind of use that today still, of like, I was able to make Patrice laugh. Like, you kind of, as you get older, you and I kind of move into more serious work, like show running and this and that. And not every project of mine is comedy. You kind of forget that you're funny, and you kind of have less outlets to be funny, especially in isolation and quarantine. Like, I'm not at bars with my friends. I'm not going out as much ever. You forget that you're funny, and I can always kind of like lean on that to be like, oh, wait a second, yeah, like back in the day, I kind of knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
Like, when you sort of have those crises of like losing
Confidence.
your
Yeah.
mojo,
Yeah.
crisis of confidence, exactly. I can kind of lean on moments like that, because Patrice, I mean, he was the GOAT, man.
Yeah. He was a very funny guy. And I imagine that, just writing for him and writing for Vince McMahon, probably both demanding people, but in different ways. Like, I got to meet Patrice a couple times on when I worked. This is going way back, on Colin Quinn's show. Colin Quinn had a very
Yeah, which
short-lived show on NBC, and
oh,
Patrice
you
was
worked
like
on
the
the
nicest
NBC
guy out of that
one.
whole cast.
Dude, he used to read the newspapers on the
Yeah, on the stoop.
yeah, I remember
Yeah,
that show.
yeah,
I just remember a couple things with that. One is, I just remember being so bummed as like an unemployed like PA in New York, that like Tough Crowd was starting, and I just couldn't get a job on that show. And I was just
yeah,
like, this is the perfect show for me. And I just felt like, oh man. But and then oddly enough, Patrice wrote for WWE for like a 3 month
is that
he
right?
did. Yeah, he was like a weird closet wrestling fan. And the
Wow.
funny story is that they hired him um, before my time, but they hired him during a time when they sort of opened up the writing team to Hollywood people
Yeah,
and writers and comedians. And so they brought him in because they had somebody one of the McMahons had seen him perform, loved him, talked to him after the show, found out he was a wrestling fan. They invited him to come be a writer. So he went and he did 3 months, the whole full schedule.
Yeah.
And then when his 3 months was up, they were like, okay, next week we're in, Billings, Montana. And he's like, no, I'm in Atlantic City. And they're like, no, you have to be, we're doing Raw. And he's like, no, I'm done.
Where he's got a gig. He's got a show in Atlantic City, right?
He's like, I'm in Atlantic City. Like, fuck, I'm out. And they were like, wait, no, what? And he's like, no, I was just doing this to have fun. Like, so yeah, he wrote for like one 3 month cycle. He was on the writing team, but yeah, so that was cool. And I don't remember your original question. I just had a bunch of like flashbacks from you talking about Colin Quinn.
Yeah, I don't even remember it either, to be honest with you.
That's all right. But I was probably jealous of you for working on that show at that time.
I think it was just the Patrice O'Neal thing, talking about what kind of guy he was. Because I thought he was a really nice guy. I was a PA on that NBC show, which PA is basically the lowest job you can have.
Yeah.
And he was super nice to the PAs. There's probably like 4 or 5 of us, and he was just great.
Well, talk about a shoestring, like VH1. It was like 8 people made that show, and we would all pack into this like little insert stage in the Viacom offices to make that with like a green screen, and basically to get warmed up, because again, it's like a tiny room, we're all packed in, and we're all like these nerdy white guys, and then this giant of comedy is standing in front of a green screen in front of us, and he has to get warmed up. Like he can't just be Patrice.
It's not flipping a switch. Like, yeah, you're right.
So the way he warmed up with us in that room was he would just basically roast all of us for the first like hour of the production day. and he wasn't just like pointing, he wasn't just like making fun jokes. Like he was really, his goal was to find the one thing that really made you, that really got you. Like he would find your biggest insecurity and just destroy you on it, but in such a loving way.
Yeah.
And so there's so many. I mean, I always joke that job I had it's the only time in my life I probably had any kind of abs, because of laughing so hard every single day. It was the best. To this day, it was like the best job.
Yeah. And God, what year was that? Because I wanted to. You got to probably come back, and we have like a ton of other things we could talk about. But I wanted to go back and talk a little bit about some of the old shows we worked on. Like you and I worked on.
Web Junk was like 2004-ish, 2005, because it was before I got WWE and left Viacom for a minute. Yeah. But yeah, it was like super early internet. So we were doing like the lady who's crushing grapes with her feet and falls off the platform. And like, the Boom Goes the Dynamite Kid, like all those original, like first run viral videos we were making fun of.
Yeah. I mean, the internet was much younger at that point. No Twitter, no Facebook.
Nothing, no social media. And then like we would lose an hour of the production day because like an attractive girl would walk by, and he would just like stop down to go like walk after her and flirt with her. Like he was the best. I mean, he was there was nothing fake about that dude. And the last thing I'll tell you, and then we can get into some NBC stuff, and then I got to run, is the last time we ended up really, I wouldn't say we were close, but we were just like, we had like a really fun camaraderie. Like I went to Montreal with him for the comedy festival, and just was sort of in his little entourage for a minute. But the last time I saw him was outside of a building in Soho that is like a Viacom building, and I saw him pull up in his like Escalade, and he got out because I guess he had a meeting in the building, and I was leaving the building, he was going in, and I was like, oh, Patrice. He's like, Goldstein, whatever. And we like dapped it up, and I was like, yo, man, I was just thinking about you because, and I told this like whatever story, and he listened intently, and then when I was done the story, he goes, you know what? I never think about you. And he walked right back into the building, which for Patrice was basically like, yo, man, I love you. Great to see you. I got to go. But it was just like, cool. You know what? I never think about you. And just like, that was his thing. Like if you called him and you'd be like, or I think he would call you. He would call you, and then the second you would start to talk, he would hang up. Like just he was just like such a dick, but like in the best possible
In a
way.
funny way,
No,
yeah.
no ill will. He had a
Yeah.
huge heart. Anyway, I could talk about that dude forever. Loved him.
Yeah. Those were different times too, man. Um, but yeah, that's good
Insane.
stuff. Hey, so I know you got to get going, but the other thing, I guess, you fled the city in the midst of the pandemic. You can talk about that. You went out. Where'd you go? Long Island to hunker down with your
Yeah.
in-laws?
I am like me and my family. We're like the poster people for everything that like the New Yorker writes about like people fleeing the city. But it is what it is. Like you got to take care of your family, and so yeah, the pandemic hit, and my wife's family, we kind of all company moved to out east, and I basically lived with my in-laws and my sister-in-law, with my wife and my, at the time, like 1.5-year-old. We
Wow.
all lived 5 people in a house
Crowded house,
for
huh?
6, 7. Yeah, it's like six. In the middle of my 40s, I'm living with my in-laws. It was fucking weird. But I have great, they're great people, and we figured it out. And the priority was for everybody to be safe and not get this thing. And it was stressful and it was combative at times, but it was also wonderful. And the great silver lining of all of it was we both, me and my wife and her family, got so much extra time with our boy that like you would never normally have, like I had. And then now the summer ended, we ended up buying a house in Westfield, New Jersey, and just sort of like realized like the city just isn't going to work for us.
Right,
Just
because you're living in a small
in
apartment,
an
probably.
apartment, like
Yeah.
we felt so, when we did go back, we felt so cooped up, and we just felt like he just got so used to having space and being able to run free sort of outside, and the city, like we were nervous just taking him to Central Park and
Sure.
groceries and going in and out of stores and people coming into our apartment and being in the elevators. It just felt, for us personally, I don't judge anybody for
Yeah,
staying
of
in the
course.
city or leaving. But for us, we were just like, we got to get out. And luckily we figured out, we figured it out, and we got a little house here in Westfield. And like I said, the silver lining is between quarantine and now sort of this like isolation period of like working remotely, I've gotten like 10 extra months every single day with my 2-year-old, which is
Yeah.
so much fun, like at such a fun stage to be watched, to witness it firsthand every single day. It's just been awesome.
Yeah, it's great. I felt that too. I've been working obviously from home for 10 months now, working in my basement right here. And,
Yeah.
all the time that you don't spend commuting that you get to actually spend with your kids instead. So good. So
Priceless.
yeah, totally. One of the silver linings of all this, because I agree that in many ways it's been super challenging and frustrating, but
Yeah, that's like a whole other podcast. But
yeah,
I'm very lucky, and as many things that I can complain about, it all falls by the wayside just because I'm so lucky. There's so many people who like didn't have somewhere to go,
yeah,
and didn't have the means to sort of, you know get out, or stay and upgrade or whatever they needed to do. And my wife's family was just like amazing to kind of like make get you know
yeah. Take
open
you guys
open
in.
doors to us, and keep everybody safe. And look, it's hard on my side. I've seen my mom twice in 10 months, and that's really
Oof.
hard. She's old, and and my son's 2, and yeah, I don't know how much longer she's gonna be around, and I want her to know who he is, and all that good stuff. So that part's really hard, but you know, it's just everybody's got their own struggle with this, and I would just we're just like immensely lucky on our side, on our side.
Yeah. And how you doing? So how long have you been in Westfield now?
Since October.
Since
So
October.
we still feel new,
Yeah.
but home
You
ownership's
are.
It's a trip, man. Like I like all of a sudden really care about landscaping and
Yeah.
and we take these walks and I'm looking like, oh, that's a nice driveway. I'd like to do my driveway. It's really fast how quickly your brain switches from city mode to suburbs mode and be like, oh man, I wonder how much it costs to do that driveway, or like, or
I know. Looking at
like how
some of
much.
like the nice whatever the bluestone and whatever
Yeah, and
I
I'm
don't even
just
know what
like,
you call it, but
or now like my Instagram, like all the focused ads are like for things like are for like barbecue tools and
yeah.
grilling tools
Oh,
and
you
things
got to get
like.
your did you get your grill yet?
Not yet. I'm waiting for the spring. It's going to be a big focus of mine because I that's what I want to do sort of with the next 40
Oh
years of
yeah.
my life, is to be that guy. And so I want to get a flat top. I want to get a grill, and I'm already a burger aficionado and a
I
burger
know
smith.
that's another thing I wanted to talk to you about too.
Yeah,
But
but
maybe we do it on another because you should come back. I feel like we got so much
I know I have weird diverse interests. I get
I
it.
know, and your hamburger thing is super interesting.
Well,
Um,
the quick story is that obviously I was just a fan, and I used my Instagram to post like really cool, fun burgers that I had been eating, and and I was following a lot of burger accounts, and one of them was this men's group called the Gotham Burger Social Club. These like basically like 10, 12 Wall Street guys get together on the like second Tuesday of every month since 9/11. They used it as like a way to like bond.
yeah,
They went to a different burger place every month, and I started commenting on their pictures. They started commenting on mine, and then I would like DM them. I was like, "Yo, man, I want to like eat with you guys sometime." And they invited me out, and I totally went into it thinking like, "Yeah, this is like life experience. I have nothing in common with these like real, these Wall Street guys.
yeah.
I'll do it for the life experience and the burger, and I'll get out, and it'll be a fun story to tell." Cut to like, they're my guys. Like they totally were against the stereotype. Like they're just like the nicest crew of dudes that like really are in it for like the fellowship and obviously the love of burgers and I mean, obviously I'm out here now. It's been a long time since I hung out with them, but yeah. So I was in a burger. I was in a burger club,
Your
and
burger club, yeah.
yeah, and then I got really into making smash burgers a few summers ago, and so like so that's like if you look at my Instagram, which is my name backwards, Goldstein Andrew, it's all my kid and burgers.
So
I'm a big
you've
aficionado.
become sort of an authority on what's a good burger, then, right?
Yeah. Because
So
I
what's a good
again with these guys, I've tried every meaningful burger in the New
in New
York
York
area.
City? So
And
what?
then and then when I travel for work, my main priority is wherever I go, I'm finding the place that that has the best burger. So like if I'm in LA, I'm using my free night to like go try a burger.
Yeah,
It's kind of like my thing.
yeah. So in New York, where give me like the top
So
three
man,
burgers.
well, my number one top tier like standalone was the
Yeah.
burger at the Spotted Pig. Obviously, that the Spotted Pig is a bit problematic. I think it closed now, sadly, because it had like a problematic past with some of its
Right, I
owners.
think I
But
remember
the,
that.
the
Yeah,
burger from the Spotted Pig was my number one top tier, and
yeah.
then down from that there was like a tier of like five, which were like. Um, the burger joint in the Parker Meridian, which was like a fun spot when we
I've
were
had that
babies.
burger. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good
that's like
burger.
that I haven't rattled off this list in a minute, so it might take me a second.
Yeah.
But uh, what else was on my list? I mean, like the lunch burger at Peter Luger's is amazing.
Hmm.
You can only get it at lunch. There's all. I mean, the thing is like it's so nowadays. It used to be there's like 10 good spots, Corner Bistro, whatever,
Yes, that's what I was gonna say. That's the one down
all
in
the
West
places,
Village,
right? But
right?
now because food is such a thing, there's new ones every day.
Yeah.
And so
Is Corner
I'm
Bistro,
behind.
Andrew, is Corner Bistro really a good burger? Is that like, do you approve of it?
Okay, so it used to be the go-to like spot, and
Yeah.
then obviously it got just bypassed by all this like newfangled like gourmet
Yeah.
stuff and all the like really foodie revolution. And so it kind of comes off a bit pedestrian now. You go and you get it and you're just like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine. But they did sort of succumb a little bit to the hype, and they changed from a really crappy white bun to a potato bun, which makes any burger better.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Corner Bistro is fine. Like, you're not going to not enjoy your time there. Oh, JG Mellon obviously is a classic that is one of my favorites. Love that burger. Um, I'm a bit out of practice because it's been a minute, but
Sure. Yeah. But I feel like you've got, I just wanted to get a few just to get a sense of like what's good in the
oh yeah.
city. Since
Well,
you've
JG
tried them
Mellon's not
all.
go. JG Mellon's not going anywhere. Burger joint. Um, I used to always put Shake Shack on there just because I love it. I think it's perfection.
Yeah.
I think they've perfected it. There's a place. What is that place called? There's a place on St. Mark's that I really dug. That was like a restaurant quality Big Mac. I can't remember that place. I'm super out of practice.
Okay. I hear you though.
I'll think of them as we talk, probably.
Yeah. I had the Corner Bistro burger, I don't know, about 6 years ago. And because I'd heard so much about it, it's sort of legendary.
Yeah.
And I thought it was good, but like you said, I think my expectations maybe had been raised so high,
Yeah, I
or
mean, now you can go to like Ainsworth and get an incredible burger. Like, it used when
yeah,
we were pages and like running around, and like McHale's was like the only good burger. Like, now
yeah,
it's a dime a dozen. You can get
yeah,
an incredible pat frita with like smoked bacon. You can get
yeah.
incredible. Um,
The thing I remember about Corner Bistro too is I think they fry their burger rather than grill it. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a crunch to it, and also the allure of Corner Bistro is you can get that burger super late at night. You can go in there at 3 in the morning and get that burger, and it
Yeah,
comes on like a really cheap little paper dish.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so there's a nostalgia factor to that burger,
yeah.
which is
And just
why.
going into that place, it's sort of a nostalgic type of place.
Yeah, it's a dive bar in the
Yeah,
West Village, so it certainly has a place in it certainly has its place,
it's
but
a
it's
top
it's
burger.
been
Yeah,
lapped by so many big time chefs that have their crazy burgers now.
yeah. Well, soon enough, you'll be grilling your own burgers.
I can't wait. I can't wait to be that guy.
It's great, man. I just did some I got some bison sliders
Oh
a
wow.
few weeks ago, and did a good friend of mine that I grew up with is a chef, and I was like, what should I do to make this really taste good, And he was like, put some Danish blue cheese on it, crumbled, and pickle some red onions. So I did
Dude,
the pickled red onions
those
myself.
those are like my two favorite burger toppings. I mean, the spotted pig burger was that the caveat is you have to like blue cheese because that was the cheese on
Oh,
it.
oh
And
God, blue
then
cheese.
pickled red onions is like that's always my like if a place has it, I love those on a
Yeah.
burger.
So I had never had that before. I've had blue cheese on burgers a lot of times. I love it. Hadn't had the pickled red onions. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I enjoy it. There's nothing I want more than to sit at a bar with a friend and have a beer and a burger like now. I,
yeah,
I miss it so much.
yeah. And then your boy too, Lev, right?
Yeah.
He's 2 years old now.
2 years old. He's talking up a storm. He again, like that dude has spent 10
Yeah,
months around just adults. And so I think like my theory is like because he's super verbal, and I think it's because he's just been around like he hasn't been quiet with kids
yeah,
playing. He's been with adults talking
yeah,
and listening to adults talk for 10 months. And so he talks up a storm. So it's really fun, and he's in a repetition phase. So if you say something, he'll repeat it. If you ask him to repeat it, he'll do it. So it's really good for like birthday videos. So like
yeah,
my brother's birthday, I'll be like, "Say happy birthday, Corey," and so he'll say it. So that's fun, and it's just like every day he's learning new things, and he's so excited to share what he has learned,
yeah,
and his recall of like he'll watch like he'll watch like a Cars 3, and then like 3 weeks later he'll like say something from the movie, and we'll be like blown away. Like, where'd you get that from?
yeah. So he's into cars. Has he watched all of them?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Cars. It started with Moana, and then Cars, and we tried the Finding Dory, Finding Nemo movies, but
Yeah.
he just goes back to cars. He's really a motorhead. Like he loves trucks.
Car-
And what's cool about this neighborhood is inevitably there's a house with some construction happening almost at all times. So we just walk around and look for the diggers and the
yeah.
the we'll just follow a dump truck if we see it and go to where they're working, and he could sit there for hours.
Yeah. Cars is a when my kids, I have two boys, and when they were young, they watched those movies over and over. It just, I think there's something about that movie and little boys that gets,
I mean, fast cars and
yeah,
Lightning McQueen and
talking. Yeah.
talking cars, like it's their Knight Rider.
Yeah. That's a good point. They're Knight Rider. I love that show. Well, that's great. I mean, you are getting to be around him a lot at an interesting, informative time. So
Yeah. Well, I gotta go soon. Speaking of, because I gotta wake him, but we should talk about our time as pages. Not to
yeah. Okay.
once a producer, always a producer. But I know that was sort of like the thrust of us getting together, and obviously, it was such an amazing time in my life. I'm sure you feel the same way. I hope you feel the same way.
Oh yeah. I mean, to this day, when I do talk about it with people, it was one of the most fun jobs I ever had. It was actually the most fun job I've ever had in the real world.
Yeah, but it was college too.
Yes.
It was like it was grad. I mean, I describe it to people as graduate school for TV. Like everybody who we were pages with, whether they were in sort of the classes around us or like above us or after us, like they all went on to do such cool things. And I know like my first couple years out of the program where like I was either unemployed or PAing, like all those jobs came from people I was a page with.
Oh yeah. Same with me. I mean, so many. Even I think that job I was telling you about on the Colin Quinn show at NBC, that came from somebody I knew in the page program.
Yeah, like my first, well, yeah, like my first like PA job came because Adam Nakampkin, former page, like
Yeah.
he had gotten hired as a PA and they needed another one, and he said, "Oh, my buddy Andrew," and so I ended up like driving a cube truck for crank anchors around the
Oh
city,
my
like
God.
driving puppets around the city. And so
Yeah.
like that literally is like my first PA job. And that was again because of a page got hired and he knew that I was looking, and that kind of started everything. And like I said, those first 2 years was just like we all helped each other.
Yeah. It's a crazy time. I don't know. I can't remember. Did you do the full year in the page program?
I did. I did tours for an extra. I think I did tours for what, like 4 or 5 months, because I wanted SNL so badly, and I put all my eggs in that basket, which I don't recommend doing because if you don't get it, then you're kind of screwed. But I did tours for a long time. But I liked tours because I liked being in front of people, and
Yeah.
I was trying to be a comedian and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And so it was like stage time to me. So I did tours for quite a while. I got SNL. So I basically did tours for 5 months. I did SNL for the next 5 months. And then my last 2 months in the program, I got the Bob Wright assignment,
Oh,
which,
I had that one too.
yeah, he was the CEO at the
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
on the 52nd floor. And
You got the lunch, Andrew.
he got the silver plated lunch with the what do you call it, the canister, I
Yeah, you
forget.
get like it was 3 or 4 course meal every day for
Yeah,
lunch.
and so you do that and you'd go through his mail, and that was cool. And
Oh,
then like my biggest regret, and I always tell young like PAs and stuff this story, is like at the end of that you get like 5 minutes with him,
yeah.
and he asks what you want to do and if he can help you. And I was so unprepared, and I blew it. Basically towards the end of that year, towards the end of that assignment, I met with like the page advisor person, and and they were like, "There's this job opening for some thing I should not have ever been a part of." It was something to do with like the Thanksgiving Day parade or something. I
Yeah.
don't know. It was like a fundraising thing, like on the charitable side, and they needed somebody, and for some reason that was in my head because I had just met with that lady. And so
Yeah.
when he said like, "What do you want to do? Like, what are you up to? And can I help you?" I started talking about that, and I didn't want that job. I didn't want to be making fundraising calls for whatever.
Yeah.
And he basically like called the person running that program and was like, hire this person. And like, it's like, if I knew, and then I quickly was asked to like leave the position because I was terrible at it and I didn't
Yeah.
want to be on the phone. And so like, if I, I always look back at that, like, oh, if I was better prepared, I would have said like, oh, well, last call Carson Daly starting up, I would love to work on that. And
Yeah.
my whole life would have been different. I would have gotten that show, and I would, I would have
Yeah.
cut out 3 years. Um, there's no real piece of advice there. It's just like a cautionary tale of just like, I kind of just said the wrong thing at a big, almost pivotal moment.
A big moment. Yeah. It's so hard.
And I ended up getting
I don't even,
fired. Like,
I remember, Andrew, that moment of getting that brief meeting with him at the end of your assignment, but I don't even remember what we talked about in that. And I was probably equally unprepared for that whole thing. For me, it was like my head was spinning. I'm sitting there, you're up on the 52nd floor of NBC, 30 Rock building. You're looking, you turn around and you're looking straight downtown. You see the Empire State Building at the time.
well, what's crazy is I was there for 9/11, and I had just, I
Oh,
mean,
really?
I don't want to bring it down here, but that's my story, is I had just gotten to Bob Wright's office and
Wow.
sort of sat, you remember the page desk was at the window that looked
Yeah.
downtown. And so I just remember walking into that office and hearing in the elevator that there was a fire at the World Trade Center. And I remember looking out the window as I was like putting my backpack down, being like, oh, that's some shit. Like, not
Yeah.
even thinking it was. And then all hell broke loose, and like police, like, because we were in the president's office, we like got like
Sure.
rushed out. Crazy, crazy, crazy. But yeah, it was a wild time. And yeah, you're just like not prepared to like be talking to the CEO of NBC
Yeah. Yeah.
ever. So it was crazy. And then, like I said, I left the page program. I did that short project and kind of got like fired. And then I was just like, oh my God, I'm never going to work again. That word's going to spread. I kind
Yeah.
of burned that bridge. It was like this horrible thing. And then I was unemployed for a really long time, and like I had no prospects. And then, like I said, out of the blue, Adam the Campkin, who was like my drinking buddy, got me that one gig, and that kind of just like steamrolled into a million other PA jobs, and that led to AP jobs, and that led to writing jobs, and that led to 10 years as a writer, and then writing jobs led to producing, and producing led to show running, and here we are.
And here you are. Yeah. It's so interesting how just you fall in, depending on where you go, where you fall into, that sends you in a direction. I certainly had that feeling too, because I mean, I went through that as well. All sorts of like stints of unemployment and then getting a PA job wherever it was. And then that show lasts 3 episodes and you're gone. You're on to something else.
Yeah.
Until eventually I could get some like traction. And I ended up getting into that game show,
Right.
the whole game show scene, and then started working my way up from there. But it was
But again, like, and I'm sure you would agree, it's all through the
oh,
people. It's not
exactly.
about your training and this and that. It was like all the
Yeah.
people.
In fact, the second game show I worked on was a show that MT got me the job for, got me the interview for at least. She was working for casting for, if you remember you remember Stump the Schwab on
Yeah, of
ESPN.
course.
So
Of
Mary
course.
Therese Rayner, she's like, hey, they need another casting assistant. Why don't you come in and interview for that? I go in and interview, and it was like, it went okay. And then the guy was like, hey, would you be interested in a researcher job? And I was like, I sort of didn't even know what that was at the time,
Right, but
And I
it's
was like,
sports
yeah, I
and
guess. I'm like, I was getting the sense he didn't think I was good for the casting job. And then he's like, I don't even remember his name, to be honest with you. But he just started rattling me. He gave me like a pop quiz on sports, and I just nailed every one of them. Because obviously
okay.
I'm a sports fan. And then he's like, wait right here for a second. And then he brought me back a written test, and I did well. And then they just,
There you go. That's what I'm saying.
but it was
It was
like you said, it was a former page. I forgot about that until you even brought it up.
yeah. That's like my whole story is just like that
Yeah.
the kindness of former pages for
Yeah.
the first like few years of struggling.
Yeah.
But we all had each other's backs. It was so much fun. I mean, I just look at the year in the program as like another year of college. Like we went drinking most nights, and we had a locker room,
I know.
and like we covered for each other, and we slept on each other's couches, and we all. It was just crazy. It was just crazy, and I didn't have the best, like most college experience, because I went to Temple, which was like a city school.
Yeah.
And so that year for me was awesome, because it was like, oh, this is kind of collegey for me. This is kind of like me, like sowing some oats that I didn't get to sow, which is like some drunken nights and some,
Out in the city too. Like I
yeah,
don't know about you, but coming from the Philly area, New York is so much bigger and so much more impressive, just in terms of a metropolis than Philly is.
yeah.
I
It was a
found,
blast, man. And then there's the whole other side, which is like the access that, like, none of us had any business having the access that we did. But
oh my
again,
God.
simpler times, pre 9/11,
Yep.
you could kind of walk in it. We had free reign of 30 Rockefeller Center to like use their facilities, and like walk onto the SNL floor with your parents if they were
Yeah.
in town, and
Yeah.
go to the SNL after parties,
Yeah.
and go to the bar with Jimmy Fallon. Like, these things were like, they're not like bragging things. Those were things that happened.
Yeah. Thursday or Friday, you come down and watch the rehearsal for whatever band is
Oh,
going to be on
absolutely.
SNL.
Oh, like
Get a personal
Coldplay.
concert.
Coldplay is debuting on SNL. Like, yes, absolutely. Like,
Yeah.
I call whomever, and like we had like free reign of some of like legacy television, like Conan.
Yeah. Conan
Rosie.
and
So at the time, it was Rosie was in the building as a syndicated show, and then
it was taped the
Conan.
next
We had
day.
SNL, and
Yeah.
then you had the news shows too, which was like
Yeah.
Today's Show if you were into
Dateline.
like morning, and Dateline and all that. And so there was a lot, and then there were specials and all kinds of stuff that ran out of that building. So
Sure.
it was just
Yeah,
like
you probably
so
remember. I'm sure, Andrew,
so
you
much
got
fun.
to one of the Rockefeller Christmas tree
Yeah,
when they do the tree lighting, the partying that goes on in NBC. Oh my
yeah.
God.
Wow.
Did you get to one of those?
I didn't really work on them because, again, I was like on the crazy SNL schedule. But yes, I know all the stories.
Yeah, but like I didn't work on it either, but I mean,
Right,
everyone
the partying.
partying right up and down that side of the building. Everyone has like drinking going on in the office, and you're watching the tree
Yeah,
lighting.
it was great. It was awesome. I refuse to take it off my resume. Uh,
Same. I leave it on there.
I leave it on there all the time, even though like I struggle, as I rack up projects and projects and projects, I lose room, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what do I take off? What do and I just refuse to take the page. I'm so proud of being part of that whole situation. And I know it's changed a bunch because NBC has changed a bunch, but
Yeah.
for our time, the period of at the time when we were there, it was like still entertainment focused. It was
Yeah.
still like comedians and performers, like right out of college, and not, it wasn't like, I think they kind of groom more executive and corporate people, but at our time, like, everybody had a side hustle.
Yeah.
Everybody was doing something in their free time that was performative, and it was so cool. And like that's another thing. Like, that's one of the reasons I won't get rid of Facebook, even though like logically I think I should get rid of Facebook, is because it keeps me in touch with so many
I
cool people
agree.
from that time.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I love just seeing all the people I knew back then, and we were very young, like you said, right out of college, and now I get to see a picture of your kid on Facebook.
Yeah,
Like I just love
exactly.
seeing you and others like growing and just going
And I
through life.
get I get Facebook DMs from Lupo, like Matt Lupo, like every like month or so, that just like crack me up, and it's just like I said, it's very collegiate. It
Yeah,
feels like college even 20 years later, with like the random DMs or comments on your Facebook post that you get from like inside jokes from 20 years ago. And
yeah,
look, John Stuckey and Murray are still professionally two of my best friends, and personally two of my really close friends. And it's like amazing, just like the best people.
yeah. It was a great time. And I agree. I always look at it as one of my best times. Just professionally, even though it wasn't, you're essentially a glorified intern, but
Right.
It wasn't, I'm comparing that to my job at a summer camp one
Yeah,
summer when I was a fishing specialist, and I just
right,
was taking kids fishing all day. That was like
right.
the.
We should also mention that we grew up very close. Not that we knew each other, but we grew up in the same
That's right.
general area. Shout
Yep.
out to Bucks County.
Bucks County. I believe you went to Tennant, right? Did
I
you go
went
to
to
Wilmington?
Tennant. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Did
went
you
to
go to
Archbishop.
Wood?
I went to Wood. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And so obviously we grew up big Philly sports fans, and
My
I don't know.
my brother still updates me on what's going on, like in the Warminster area, because he umpires baseball, so he'll drive through for games, and so he'll be like, oh, there's a new Five Guys in the what's it called shopping center. Like they'll just, or like
I've not been.
Yum Yum Donut is still there.
Yeah, I have not been back there for so long. I mean, I get down to my mom's every now and then, but I don't get any
Right,
farther south really.
right.
Down that way. Probably
Well,
like 5 years at
yeah,
least.
yeah. Well, yeah, I haven't been. We went to a wedding that was in like Jamestown. That's like, right near Warm, and it was such a trip to like drive with my wife through
Yeah,
fucking Southampton and Warminster. It was wild.
yeah.
But yeah, so it's just this was really cool, man. I'm glad you reached out, and I'm glad you asked, and I hope you keep the podcast going. And if you get back to me on the list, I'm happy to come back. But I appreciate all the kind words, man.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Andrew, I just thought it was great. It was super fun piece of content you made, and I was happy to see it blow up the way it did. So I was
Thanks,
like, I got
man.
to talk to you about this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll send you the clip like in full, and you do it. But again, I think I'm gonna repost it
Yeah, repost it. I
on
mean, you should.
Inauguration
It's
Day.
a perfect time to make it go viral again.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if we can
Yeah.
capture lightning in a bottle again. But yeah, man, it was real. And I have regards from Kevin Miller, who we talk all the time, and he still does his Tavani impression. If I bring you up, and I lived with Gellis. This is a part of the podcast nobody cares about, but
I remember that. Yeah.
I lived with Miller and Gellis for like
I-
2 years in 55th and Broadway.
yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And Gellis is crushing it. He's like,
I
he
know.
runs CNN election coverage.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know for a while he was running Wolf Blitzer's show. He may
Yeah,
still
and
do
then
that too.
yeah, and then they promoted him, and he runs sort of all this election coverage.
Yeah. Yeah. He's doing well. Those guys are on my list for this as well too. But
Oh, you should totally get Gellis. He's a great, and obviously Kevin too, who had like basically every job at SNL and is now at Seth Meyers. So
I know, and he's lasted there. I mean, he's 20 plus years in that building.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So, and I lived with Kevin in that apartment, but I also lived with him solo. And so, again, that was all through the Page program.
Yeah.
That was like during the Insomniac days on Comedy Central. Kevin was an assistant to the 3 executive producers. He left to go back to SNL, and that job opened up. And Stuckey and Murray were like, who were working there, were like, "Yo, dude, this assistant job opened." They got me in. I got the job. I had no business being anyone's assistant ever, and I eventually got fired from that job because
you did. I worked there. I remember
booked.
you being there.
I booked an edit. I booked an edit instead of holding an edit, which for anybody in production knows that you're on the hook for like $6,000. So
Yeah.
I cost and they were just like, yeah, we're gonna move in a different direction. And again, thought my career was over, like thought I burnt a bridge, like some people stuck their neck outs for me to get me hired. And it was like a really like, I don't know what I'm going to end up doing. But it was a big looking back, it's a lesson. It's just like, it really like flashed for me, like what I shouldn't be doing. I shouldn't be an assistant. I should be doing something creative. And I just went back to I put my nose to the grindstone, and I was a PA, and got into the MTV system, and then like off to the races. So
yeah, it's weird because you make a good point. Like when you get into TV, it's like you sort of have this impulse to just take whatever you can get at any point, because obviously you need money to survive.
Yeah.
But sometimes
not all those jobs are what you are perfect for you, and I certainly was not cut out to be. I can't even be my assistant. I'm the least organized.
Yeah,
it's terrible. But but it at the time you can't see it, but like years later you look back, you're just like, man, that was so pivotal. That was so important to learn that lesson.
Yeah, and I guess that's
to not take a job because of the show.
Yeah. Right. Because that was a great show, Insomniac.
Yeah, so I would have been the janitor if they said, like
Yeah.
I just wanted that on my resume, like,
Sure.
and be around Dave Attell.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I worked on that, and I was doing like, I was like more of a, I was a PA on
In
the
the
other side of the
field.
office, huh?
Oh yeah, you were in the office. I think
Yeah,
that's probably the only time you and I worked together.
I think it might be actually, yeah.
There might have
Well,
been some
actually, we
crossover.
worked. I wanted to talk to you about the MTV days. We could do it another time,
Oh yeah,
but
we'll
we
do a
worked in the
whole
building. Wade and I were working on Trailer Fabulous, and you were working on, I think,
Boiling Points.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, which was my first writing job. So I would say in a few months we'll do this again, and we'll do the MTV edition.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah,
that's
we'll
a
do that.
whole 10 years of my life.
Yeah, I think that's good. All right, so why don't we wrap it up
All
here?
right, dude. Thank you so
Yeah,
much. Go Sixers, go Phillies, go Eagles. We'll see who they hired as their coach. I'm
yeah.
refreshing Twitter every 10 minutes to see.
I get updates from my son at this point. Because that's what he's doing. He's constantly on Twitter waiting to
That's
see.
good.
Yeah,
You have your own Adam Schefter in your house.
yeah, yeah.
Good.
Well, yeah, it was great. It was great catching up with you. Great talking to
I
you.
love it.
Fist bump.
Fist bump,
Yeah, man.
elbows, because it's COVID.
That's right.
But no, man, I love this stuff. So I love talking about it, and I love seeing that you're doing great, and your family looks amazing, and like the baseball thing. I can't wait to
Yeah.
pick your
You'll
brain
have,
for little league advice.
you'll have fun. You'll have fun. I know you will.
Well, I appreciate it, and
Yeah. Thanks
we'll
for
see.
doing it.
Next viral video, maybe we'll collabo on something.
I want another viral video in 6 months so we can have an excuse to talk.
I'll work on it. Thanks,
All
bud.
right.